Hey everyone, this is Eytan from CommonTime Pathways. I'm really excited about today's episode. I'm sitting right here with one of my favorite people in the world. This is Michael Bobbitt, who's the executive director of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, as well as several other wonderful things I could say about him. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but today's conversation, just so you all know, is really going to focus on the arts and its value as an equal pillar in the community and in society to physical health and physical activity, and talking about college and what that means for college spaces, as well as artists who want to make it in the world as artists. And I think this is a wonderful thing to talk about. You all know CommonTime Pathways is right into that conversation, and Michael is one of the coolest champions in the world with regards to arts advocacy. So please, Michael, hello, how are you? How's it going? Tell us a little bit about yourself so that the listeners can get a sense of what you're doing.
Hey, Eytan, and hey, listeners of CommonTime Pathways. Michael Bobbitt, Executive Director of Mass Cultural Council, which is the state's arts agency in Massachusetts, created by legislation, and our job is to support the creative cultural sector of Massachusetts. We do that through a number of ways, primarily through grants, but also advancement of the sector. And what I mean by that is that we work to think about how arts can be integrated across all of the Commonwealth. How are we working in health? How are we working in transportation, public safety, criminal justice system? All the things that we know about that the arts can benefit, education, I can go on and on and on. And so we're doing all that work, building those relationships across state government, and then also focusing on cultural policy, which anyone that's in the arts sector knows that there is usually a dearth of cultural policy on general ledgers, federal government, local government, state governments. And so how are we getting our leadership to think more robustly and creatively about the infrastructure needs for the arts sector, because funding alone is not going to help a sector grow. And so we're doing all that work, and it's exciting and it's exhausting, and I get to spend my day running across the state and supporting arts, but also talking about the value that we bring beyond just the enjoyment of it all.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think that your insights are going to really be helpful in terms of thinking about music and art and theater and all of the arts as an economic driver, not just as something that's nice to have. And I know you just got your MBA. You just finished that, right?
I
So
did.
congratulations.
Thank
Yes.
you. I pushed submit on my final assignment about a week and a half ago. And so
Oh, goodness. Time for a toast.
time for a toast. I know. Yes.
Oh, my Lord. But no, I think that's wonderful. I think that we're going to love talking to you for a second about the role of the arts in the cultural economy and really what the economy looks like in comparison with everything else that's going on, because CommonTime Pathways, you know, works specifically on making sure that artists, in particular musicians right now, can be musical in college and use music as an economic driver for going to college. So talk to me for a second about what your thoughts are with regards to the role of music in particular, but also the other arts in driving an economic system. Like, how does that fit together?
Yeah. So the art sector is a huge driver of revenues and spending. So when most people engage in the arts, they get a babysitter, they use public transportation, they put gas in their car, they park, they don't go by themselves often. They usually go with a number of people. Maybe they'll have a meal before and a drink after. They'll buy concessions. So all of that secondary spending that happens around arts engagement is huge for the economy. So not only does it bring in a lot of revenue for its own economy, the arts sector in general, but it also supports all these other industries. So in Massachusetts, the arts sector is a 29.7 billion with a B dollar industry. So this
Whoa.
is right. This is larger than manufacturing, agriculture, utilities, 3 times the size of transportation, larger than construction, and pretty much on par with the retail industry. The number of employees we have is on par with some of our large industries like biotech. And on a federal level, it's a $1.4 trillion industry. It is this nation's largest export.
That's true.
In addition to all the things I mentioned, it's also larger than the education sector. So it's a massive revenue generator for the GDP and the economy of our country and of our state. I'm not sure that the support for the sector is on par with the kind of support that other industry making less money for the country is. And some of that goes to our own skill set when it comes to our business acumen and our political power, which we can talk about later. But I think that this romanticized version of the starving artist doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't.
So
have
let's
to
talk
be.
about that. Talk to me about this dichotomy, the idea that there's $29 billion in Massachusetts alone and $1.4 trillion in the country going into the arts economy. Yet we've still romanticized this starving artist, and most parents still think that their children will live in their basement until they're 45 if they go into the arts. Why do those two things coexist? Like, what is it about artists that makes them so susceptible to that message?
So I believe that this may be a bold statement to say, but I
like bold statements.
Yeah, I believe that the problems that exist in the arts sector are frankly the arts sector's fault.
Yeah.
So we've created the conditions by which we can't thrive, and so as I think about universities, and we're talking to people that are looking to go into this field, most schools, if not all, because I haven't yet found one that offers a degree in art, don't require business courses for artists. So you learn your whole 2 to 4 years in a college setting to make product, but you don't learn how to sell it or to price it or negotiate a contract or what your legal rights are or supply and demand or economics. And similarly, you don't learn about civics and how politics and being organized as strong advocates for a sector can affect your livelihood or your sustainability or the infrastructure. So if you were to compare us with other industry like housing and climate, even like the gun lobby, we are not organized and we don't have a lot of political power. So that's why there isn't a lot of cultural policy on the books. It's also why the funding coming from government to the art sector is really low compared to the other sectors I mentioned that actually get significantly more support and more infrastructure from government. And those things go hand in hand. Like the industry in this country that does the best are those industries that have deep relationships with government. And also, when government decides to invest in an industry, the private sector tends to follow. And so if we have gaps in skill when it comes to business, and we have very low political power, then you're going to have a sector that struggles. And so it's hard to know where and how this sort of mindset started, this idea that if you go into the arts, you're going to be starving. Because at one point in the history of humankind, the art sector was the top industry. And everyone went to artists to find out what was next. We were replaced by philosophy, and now we're replaced by tech. But at one point, we were at the top money makers of the world. And so I don't know what happened. I don't know if because we lacked business acumen and political acumen, we just decided that this is the life, you're going to be a starving artist. We accepted that. But we certainly have practiced it and perfected it, and we often romanticize it as opposed to saying, no, this is not acceptable, right? So
that's fantastic. I feel like there's an enormous dissertation to dive into from a philosophical perspective of why the starving artist is so romanticized and appealing. But then we also have to remember that because of this economy, are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of professional artists that are living in this country and making a living between being Banksy and living in their parents' basement. There's a whole host of people who have bigger houses than you and me. And I keep telling people this, like, if you want to be an artist, it's 10,000 hours of mastery. You want to spend 10,000 hours being a master in the public eye. But amongst your peers, if you want to be a master, it's the next 10,000 that matter even more. And so if you're willing to go be an artist, just like willing to go to med school, or if you're willing to go to law school, the idea is that if you spend those 10 and eventually 20,000 hours, you can make a good living as an artist. You've just got to make sure
Absolutely.
that you've dedicated yourself to your craft the same way that they have.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the other piece, is this kind of miraculous decision that everyone makes about the fact that if you're not a good artist from the get-go, you don't have the innate talent, that you never will be a successful artist.
Yes.
And to me, that is a huge misnomer, because there are so many artists out there that have worked so hard at their craft that it feels like talent.
Yeah.
And I think that's enormously valuable. But let's talk for a second about... Do your thing. Yeah.
No, you have to marry talent with skill to get success. And I would also say you have to marry skill and creativity with good, solid business acumen and good, solid political acumen. Let's not forget that there are tons of people hired to make laws and to decide what to do with the economy. So we have to have relationships with them. But often people
That's a good
focus
message.
just on the talent, and they don't think about how to
The hard work behind it.
Right. We'll commercialize and capitalize on that talent. And I know those are dirty words in the arts sector, that if you are making
another thing.
capital, if you're commercializing your work, you're selling out. Or that if you understand the business principles, your art may erode. I don't know if that's the case, because I look at artists like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, who are just killing it.
Business people.
Right. And every single time they have a new album comes out, it's better artistically and it's better commercially. So like, there's no longitudinal studies about the arts and its lack of business acumen, and or if the business skills will erode the quality of the art later. And so I just think that this is part of the mindset and belief and value system that we as artists and people putting out the bulk of the workforce, especially colleges, have to really start thinking about. But I can go on and on about that.
Yeah. No, so your mention about colleges is actually interesting, but I'd like to direct the conversation back into that phase of thinking about college education, because most people think of college as an economic driver, right? Everyone says if you go to college, you'll get a better paying job. If you get a degree, someone will hire you to do a more important job, and then you'll get more money and more economic value will be associated. And you pay for a college education in theory because there's a return on investment. So why are we studying in college? And this is the most interesting thing to me, because not only artists, but also academics in general feel like the monetization of their knowledge is antithetical to the idea that they are academic, or that they are artful, or they artists, or they're artful. I think there's this desire to be aloof from economics in order to be intellectual. And there's a whole host there too.
Yeah, there's the data's out there that a college education just is better for your future livelihood. There are people that don't choose to go that way and still are successful. I am literally in the last few years finally finished up my college education, and I think that I have done well, both artistically and from the other kinds of jobs I've had. There's something really great, especially when it comes to craft. Careers that require really fine-tuned craft. There's something great about being in a space where you're concentrating solely on developing that skill. You certainly can develop the skill in the workforce, and there are many self-taught people out there, but I have found it useful in all of my training to be in a space with other people so that you can have this sort of healthy competition or learn in a group setting. And so I'm a strong believer in college. And also I'm a believer in being self-taught. I mean, a lot of my business skills prior to getting, I should say self-directed. I mean, so a lot of my business skills that I acquired prior to getting the MBA were in non-formal training programs. Some of it was on my own.
I got my MBA on the streets.
Yeah, right. I check out books from the library. I love YouTubeversity and Googleversity, Coursera and LinkedIn Learning and Udemy. But I also have done a lot of fellowships and sort of weekend courses and day-long courses. So it's possible to get the path in many ways. I preferred the college setting because there's something about being in the space with other people learning that I think is super special and hard to replace.
But let's talk about the environment that's created within college that guarantees success, right? So college education, we can all agree, is something that we feel is important, and we feel it's a great workshopping space to cut your teeth on ideas and concepts and see how that you can adapt them and incorporate them into what your life journey is. And I think that you're right, that all of that is extraordinarily valuable. Let's think about it for a second in terms of what keeps people in college when they're there. And I think that the arts plays a huge role in building that community, in building that sense of stability and in that sense of belonging, which I think all ties back to something quite interesting, which is actually mental health. And I'm trying to transition this conversation, I know you know, towards something that you've done, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, which is initiate something called Arts Prescribing. Can you talk to us, and we'll go back to the college thing and what that means for a college environment, but can you give everyone who's listening just kind of a little nugget about what it is that you've done here with health and arts and what that means to you?
Yeah, so arts prescribing is sort of a subsect of social prescribing,
Right.
which has for the most part been around since the 70s. It's a term used to suggest the different ways that your healthcare provider can suggest ways of getting healthy. So you've all been to the doctor, and doctor will say, you need to eat better, or you need to go for a walk, or get out in nature, or do something fun, right? So those have been things that they have talked about for many years, but we didn't really have a product for that. A bunch of years back, Mass Cultural Council heard about the work that was being done in the UK and Canada, specifically around arts prescribing. So they did some research, and we brought a program to Massachusetts, and we beta tested it for a number of years. So this is a program whereby healthcare providers can prescribe arts and culture to their patients. We did it for a number of years. We had 12 healthcare providers working with us, and about 30, no, let me backtrack. We had about 30 or so healthcare providers and 12 arts organizations working with us to sort of figure out what this is, to collect data and everything. And then we were refunding the arts organizations for the prescriptions they were filling, right? And so I came back to the team after all that research and data, my own research, and I said, we're doing healthcare's job. We're keeping people healthy. We shouldn't be paying for this. Healthcare should be paying us for helping them do their job. So I said to them, let's not do the reimbursements. Let's take the information we've had. We've had 3 or 4 years of piloting this. We don't need any more of that information. Let's use our resources to find someone out there that can help us scale this across the state and really institute arts prescribing as a really new form of healthcare. So last summer, we launched the first in the nation's statewide solution to arts prescribing. So this is a program where healthcare providers, including school counselors, doctors, addiction specialists, faith leaders, social workers, they can prescribe 12 doses of arts and culture to their patient. And those arts and culture activities include theater, music, but it can also be a dance class or a music class or a writing class or a poetry class. Those prescriptions all come with a companion ticket because most of the prescriptions are helping with mental health issues, but also physical health issues. And so we're not going to send you to the theater by yourself. We're going to send you to the theater by a friend. So once a month, every month, if you get a prescription, you can go engage in arts. And then we're able to track after you have this engagement, how you're feeling based on some data and statistics and measurements that are designed by people in the mental health world. The great thing is that this is all paid for by third-party payers. And that can be a number of things. So that includes insurance, managed care providers, Medicare, Medicaid. We've recently got a couple of municipalities to use opioid settlement money to prescribe arts for people dealing with addiction issues.
Whoa.
Housing authorities, we're in conversations with the Gaming Commission to help curb gambling addictions. And so we're starting to see it bubble up. We have some great data. 77% of the people that are getting prescriptions are actually taking their arts medicine. And most people don't know that only 40% of the people that get drug prescriptions take their medicine.
Take their medication.
So we're doing better than that. We also have new data showing that people that are taking their arts prescription go to their health care provider, back to their doctors, 40% less.
Oh, that's interesting data.
That's saving healthcare a shit ton of money, right? And
Yeah.
making people feel better and generating new patrons for arts organizations, because those arts organizations are getting their tickets are being purchased at the full price.
At list price.
And they don't have to do anything different. They have to go to like
Hmm.
a workshop on safety measurements. But so it's this great, great thing, and I'm looking forward to it scaling.
That sounds to me fantastic. And I know you've probably thought about this, but for any of the naysayers out there, this is the arts equivalent for mental health reimbursement that exists for me when I need a physical health preventative reimbursement for having a gym membership.
Yep.
There are so many healthcare providers out there that will provide a refund to you for your gym membership costs because they know that going to the gym means you need a doctor less in the future and saves them money in the long run.
Yoga was covered way back when.
Incredible. I think this is absolutely right, that our minds need to be as healthy as our bodies.
Oh yeah,
And
the
there
data.
is, yes, I am 100% here for this. I am a big cheerleader for this plan. And if, CommonTime can ever help you scale it, of course, let us know. We'll get the word out even more. But if you can get your money back for a gym membership from your healthcare provider, you should get money back for your arts subscriptions from a healthcare provider and for having cultural interactions and experiences. And that also fuels the economy, but also saves us money when it comes to spending money on healthcare. I think this is actually wonderful.
Yeah, my hope is that it'll reach sort of zeitgeist phase and just be super common. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but we only discovered that exercise was good for your health in the 1980s.
I remember the jogging revolution, yes.
And then we had sort of silver sneaker programs, which sort of bloomed across the whole country. My dream is that in a few years, when you go to the doctor, they'll say, "How's your eating? How's your exercise? How's your stress? How's your arts engagement?" Like
Yeah.
the dream that it's just part of what we do. And so I need the arts sector. This is where the entrepreneurial thinking comes in, because we took arts, which the arts has been healing people for millenniums.
Yes.
And we took healthcare finance and we said, hey, there's a mutually beneficial product that we can design here. And I think that's the kind of thing, like if arts people had stronger entrepreneurial thinking, all the things we talk about, the benefits to education, the benefits on transportation, the messaging that we can do for environmental issues, the work that we do in the criminal justice system to reduce recidivism. I mean, if we start thinking...
I have someone on that score you need to talk to. Andre
Yeah.
DeQuadros at Boston University has done some extraordinary research on prison music programs.
Oh, yeah. I just actually heard that there are judges in Massachusetts that are sentencing their people on probation to literature courses. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to be having some follow-up conversations about that. But again, I want us to think entrepreneurially about how we deliver the services, because typically what the arts sector does is it finds a topic and it raises the money and does other people's jobs. So we're doing art and criminal justice and recidivism work. We're doing arts and education, but we're usually paying for it as opposed to being
Right.
paid for it. So anyway, I could
That's a
pontificate
business
more and
issue.
more about that. It's
That's a
business issue.
monetization issue
Exactly.
and a business acumen situation that we all know artists particularly struggle with. So thinking really quick about mental health, I think there has been a really big uptick in colleges and universities engaging mental health services for their students. There has been an uptick in recent years in student depression, student suicide rates, and then many of those students are not actually listed because much of it is undiagnosed. But beyond that, many of these students simply drop out because they don't feel like they can make it. They don't feel like they can belong. And so having a student come in, incur $20, $30, $40, $50,000 of debt in a year simply to drop out because they don't have the mental health supports to be successful is a horrifying standard that exists in colleges and universities across the country. And I know that they're trying to address it through their health services. But I think that you're onto something here. They need to be addressing it through their arts and culture services and through student life for their students. Like if a student sits in their dorm room and does nothing but study for 3 months, what kind of a human being are they growing?
Right. And
so,
yeah.
yeah.
It's come out of the closet lately, mental health concerns. And thank you to our young people for raising our awareness about that. And some of it could be that we've gone through a lot in this country in the last 5 years, and we will be going through a lot for the next 10, 15 years. Also, we have these little computers in our pockets that we're sitting in alone in a space. The one thing that humans will always need is to come together and engage in things together. And there's nothing like food and art that brings people together. And
Chefs and musicians, the two people in the world that don't want to upset anyone ever.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity to use the arts sector to help save the world, bring people together, get them on the same page about critical issues, get them feeling better and loving each other. I mean, it's so lovely to go to a Beyonce concert and see every type of person there enjoying this fantastic artist's work. But you see that in theater, you see it in concerts, you see it all over the place. And so this is, again, where I think that our adaptive change that we need to do and stop self-isolating and self-segregating will help us to show the value of the arts sector beyond economics, beyond joy, but all into the other areas that we can help.
But this is interesting. I think that students will ultimately feel stronger about their connection to a place and a space when they can engage with it culturally. I think this is the beauty of continuing to think of arts and culture as a secondary pillar to physical health. Yeah. And I think that these are things that keep the pantheon of our lives, of our beings, standing upright. And so I am really excited that you are a supporter of what we're trying to do and turn music into an economic driver to get at the wallets of the parents really quickly, to convince more musicians to stay musical in college. I think that even without being a music major, simply being a musician in college, like being in theater groups, like being in dance groups and a cappella groups and musical theater groups in college, actually creates a very deeply strong sense of self and sense of belonging, and then can result in higher retention, higher success, higher academic success, higher everything in terms of the things that we're trying to do to get that return on investment from a college education.
And to support that, I will also say that it was discovered like in the 90s. Richard Florida, who was a great philosopher, talked about the value of the arts sector. And in fact, he and Daniel Pink talked about being at the dawn of the creative age, and meaning that the next phase of the world's evolution is going to be through creativity. So we've had industrial age, we've had agricultural age, we've had manufacturing
technological age.
Yeah, and so now they're saying we're in the creative age. And so all the problems that we have created, and we've really created a lot of problems, all of these problems will be solved through creative thinking. And so all the more reason to participate in the arts when you're in college and music. What's interesting is in the last couple of years, major corporations, the World Economic Forum, Deloitte, JP Morgan, Wall Street Journal, Adobe, all these groups have put out information stating that creativity is the number one skill set needed by the workforce across the board. Number one, meaning that it's no longer a soft skill, it is a critical professional development tool. We don't have yet the products to sell this idea, even though we have lots of arts engagement out there. We haven't figured out how to get this to the C-suites and the middle managers so that they can actually have all of their employees engage in creativity so they can start solving problems.
This is a workplace evolution that we're experiencing. And I'm actually hoping very much that I submitted a panel to South by Southwest this year, specifically on the role of empathy education and pure creativity education on the future of the workforce in the middle of the 21st century in the face of what is now agentic AI. And there is an incredible discussion to be had about what it is to be purely creative. And since these organizations are talking about it this way, how do we as educators teach creativity? And the hardest thing to remember, not only as we teach creativity, but in the workplace, how do we foster creativity in all of our employees, is by creating time for unstructured play with familiar materials.
Yeah.
And I know how simple that sounds, but I can talk forever about the fact that Tupac was publishing music and getting credited for songs more than a decade after he died, because creativity was a habit for him.
Yeah.
He wrote into a notebook every single day for 2 or 3 hours, and that gets you to your 10,000 hours real quick. And so the idea is that you'll produce so much that makes no sense unless you have the ability to creatively play with it. So in the workplace, you're thinking about CEOs, thinking about their employees, about business leaders, executive directors for nonprofits even, who have typically associated productivity with time on task.
Sure.
With, we've got 8 hours to finish this report, let's get it done, as opposed to, how much free time did you have to think about this problem in a new way?
There are so many things to say. I mean, some of our...
Please, I'm excited about this conversation now. I'm really excited.
Well, some of our most advanced companies and the companies that have been doing the best have known this, and they had a whole 80-20 thing, 80 hours of play, 20 hours of work, right? Google and Apple, they talked about that stuff.
Creativity Inc., all that stuff, yep.
Way back when. So it's not new. It's also the STEM and STEAM argument. Like that A in STEAM is not necessarily about the arts, it's about creativity. And I remember when the STEM folk realized they were going to have a shortage of workforce 20 years ago. And so they organized and really pushed our state leaders in across the country, leadership, to build STEM infrastructure into the school system so that they had a pipeline to get them into college and get them into the workforce. The arts sector kind of hung out on the side in our typical way because we don't understand politics and civics, and so we speak
business.
So we speak about it from a values place, as opposed to simply joining the STEM advocates and pushing for STEAM. Then, so now as I come in and try to overcorrect that in the state, I'm being met with two things: one, they know it's going to be expensive. And two, it's going to be emotional because reputationally, we have a international reputation as being one of the top STEM states in the world. And so Michael Bobbitt's saying, got to be STEAM. I don't know if I have enough power as one single voter to convince them to move that way. I am hearing people say STEM to STEAM. One of the things I was going to tell you is that I have been doing a couple of panels on creativity as a professional development tool. And I typically start by asking, these are typically C-suite people in government, in private sector and nonprofit. And I'll say to them, how many of you all vet your employee prospects for their creative practice in interviews? No hands go up. How many of you all evaluate their performance on their creativity at the end of the year? No hands go up. How many of you all have creativity as a qualification on your job descriptions? No hand will go up. And then I'll say, how many of you all get mad when your employees can't come up with an idea to solve a problem or to reduce costs or to expand markets? And every single hand will go up. And then they'll immediately get it that if they're not developing creativity as a real professional development tool, and they're not incorporating it when they're hiring people, they're losing money. And some of the data out there is showing and some of the data has shown like it's 16, 17% difference for those organizations that are prioritizing creativity as part of their professional development goals for the year and those that don't. So we're in a critical place as the sector where we can really take advantage of that. I also, one of the things we're developing, we're going to hire a consultant to help us this year, is we're looking at arts and creativity as a employee benefit. So in employee benefits packages, how can we incorporate that? So similar to the gym membership or transportation reimbursements, maybe every employer gives each of their employees $50 a month to spend on arts and culture, and then when you go do an activity, you can submit your receipt for reimbursement. That would do a couple of things. One, is going to do the mental health thing, and two, is going to do the professional development thing. And they should start seeing some growth in their creativity in their organization. So,
not to mention employee culture.
Employee culture, exactly. So stay tuned for all of that stuff.
That's really cool. I'm curious, as someone who got my MBA on the streets and is trying to build CommonTime Pathways as a startup, how are you talking to business leaders who simply say the cost of doing business is already high, Mr. Bobbitt? You know, what does that mean to them? I mean, and I know that you're looking, but there's going to be someone who says that. I'm hopefully not going to be one of them, but I want to make sure that, you know, I understand what is that not necessarily cultural value of providing that. What is the economic driver for a business owner to have that?
So one of the things I've learned in the MBA coursework I did is that there's always a desire to increase revenues and decrease expenses as much as possible, the widest return on investment. And so there are tools out there, lean strategies, Sigma 6, these are all sort of like standardized business practices. But to engage in some of those tools, you have to have a mind that is expanded to the creative process. And one of the things we do as artists is that we can open up a blank sheet of paper and hear a song in our heads and put it on paper. We can open up a blank sheet of paper and then, you know, a month later, there's a movie or a play or a poem or a dance. We actually have the ability to see the future. And so if you want someone to be able to reduce your costs, because the cost of doing business is high, you need creative people. And so to me, it's a win-win. That investment you would make in having your employees learn creativity or take a music class or go to the theater is going to come back significantly.
I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. You know I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
This has been
the feeling is
awesome.
mutual.
This has been awesome. This conversation is not over. You and I can sit for days, I'm sure, until we run out of things to talk about. But I want to thank you for joining us. This has been a really wonderful experience for me, learning more about what your mission is, what's been going on with you. And I'm just so honored that you came to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Eytan. I appreciate all the work you're doing to develop career pathways for young artists.
Thank you so much. Talk soon, all right?
Take care. Thanks for your time. Talk to you soon.